Good morning, Commissioners. Today's date is February 15th. This is the City Plan Commission here briefing. We'll call the meeting to order at 9:06. First order of business is to appoint temporary chair, Housewright. Can I have a motion?
I move that we make, we appoint Chair Housewright as the chair for today.
Second.
Who seconded the motion?
Yeah, that's queen for the day, king for the day, chair for the day.
Vote, please. I'm sorry.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay. May I call roll call, please? District 1? District 2? District 3?
Present.
District 4?
That's you, Tom.
District 5?
He's virtual.
Virtual or?
Not here.
Oh, all right. District 6?
Present.
District 7?
Not here.
District 8?
I'm here.
District 9? District 10?
Here.
District 11? District 12?
Present.
District 13? District 14? And place 15.
I'm here. Thank you. It's 9:08, and I would like to appoint Commissioner Herbert as vice chair today. If there's no objections, we'll proceed with that. Hearing none, we will have Commissioner Herbert as our vice chair today. Appreciate him serving. Thoughts are with our chair, who is out ill today, and so we'll perhaps see him on the screen. I think at this point, I turn it over to the city attorney's office.
You gotta read it in. Read it in. And read it there.
We need to read our first item into the record, do we not?
It's a briefing item. The first briefing item is briefing and discussion of the Ford Dallas Comprehensive Land Use Plan.
I think we were going to do the other item first.
Okay.
So that we
Get
can go
direction.
into executive session.
All right, Chair Housewright has requested that a change of briefing agenda order be made, and we're going to move on to briefing item number 2, DCA 223-008, consideration of amending the notice requirements for zoning cases and code amendments that may result in the creation of a nonconforming use and the requirements for initiating and conducting a Board of Adjustment hearing to establish a compliance date in the Dallas Development Code.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Bert Vandenberg. I'm an Assistant City Attorney at the City of Dallas. Some of you may know me from other presentations, including 8.503 and Me, a Love Story, and Parliamentary Procedure, How to Put a Glide in Your Stride, a Dip in Your Hip, and Come to the Mothership. With me is Casey Burgess. He is the head of the Municipal Regulatory Section. He is also the Deputy Chief of the General Counsel Division. We're going to talk about SB 929 and how it has to be turned into a code amendment. It's already gone through ZOAC. We were given direction. Today we will not be bringing forward the ordinance. We plan on talking about the technical aspects. Casey will talk about that. That's sort of the complicated part. I will talk about some of the more, I think, controversial parts, and then we will go into executive session before we take questions to avoid any confusion out at the Horseshoe. And then we can come back if there are questions, though I suspect most of them will be in a couple weeks when we bring the actual ordinance in. Unfortunately, for those of you who are at ZOAC, you're not going to see really anything new. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Casey Burgess, and away we go.
Good morning. If we can go to the next slide. Want to give just a really high level, overview. There we go, of SB 929. So this bill really does two big things that are going to require us to do a code amendment. The first is it changes up how we do notice when a new zoning case comes forward. Previously, we would just send out notice to people within the notice area. Under SB 929, we're also required now to provide written notice to people if the zoning change may result in their use becoming non-conforming. And that's not just property owners the way that we've traditionally done it. That also includes business personal property owners as well as tenants. And the bill also requires us to provide very specific language as part of that notice, which you can see there on the slide. And the second thing that the bill does is it really preempts our current Board of Adjustment process for non-conforming uses. So under the current process, a citizen can make an application, take a case to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment hears evidence, and they can set a compliance date for that. Under this new bill, that process really no longer exists. The way we did the hearings and stuff don't work anymore under this new bill. Under the new bill, the board would still make a decision on whether or not the non-conforming use would have a detrimental effect on neighboring properties, but there's really not that second part of the hearing where they set a compliance date. Actually, under the new bill, it gives the property owner or lessee a choice of remedies. They can choose to amortize their investment out, and that is really a different process than we have currently. Currently, the board would say they would do an accounting analysis, look at how much money they're bringing in, and set a date that this is when you need to close down. Under the new bill, it's kind of up to that business, kind of on their honor when they have amortized that out and they shut down. Or they can choose to ask for a payment, say, city, give me money today and I'll go away. So they've got that choice. So we've got really two big sections of the code that we're going to need to amend in response to that bill. The first one is Section 51A, that's 4.701. That's where all our notices are addressed. And then Section 51A is 4.704, where we talk about non-conforming uses.
And if you'll excuse a quick technical hiccup, I will put the next PowerPoint on. So Casey really gave a high-level summing up of the technical parts. I think one thing that wasn't readily apparent in Casey's presentation is it's really the notice stuff that is going to be technically problematic. The stuff that has the parts of it that have to do with nonconformity are actually far more complicated than the rest of the ordinance, and we've been looking into that. However, I am going to talk about the amortization hearings because that is what a lot of people have been talking about. So the bill, SB 929, was authored by State Senator Tan Parker. He's from Flower Mound, and I'm not too sure there's a delay in my presentation, so this is going to be odd. Anyway, in Flower Mound, they don't actually do amortizations, so it's interesting that he authored the bill that really made amortizations problematic for us. The change, as Casey said, it changed how compensation was calculated and allows the operator or the owner, operator and owner perhaps, to recoup the value in cash rather than at the end of their operation over time. What Senator Parker did, he wasn't subtle about it. He made it aimed at the city of Dallas. And he said in his write-up that the city never has to pay the landowner a dime for taking away the rights to use their property. Instead, implements the use of an accounting maneuver to allow the property owner to compensate themselves. So what we used to do was allow there was a two-part hearing, and I'll go into it. The first part decided if there was an adverse effect on neighboring properties or the applicants who brought in the case. If there was, a second hearing was held where they determined the value of the investment in the business. And then the operator or the owner was allowed to recoup that cost over time. And there was no cash outlay by the city. What the bill's author has done has turned that on its head, like so many things that happened at the 2023 session. So in his write-up, he points out that one city put a number of auto-related businesses out of work to establish an arts gateway. That's the city of Dallas. That's one interpretation of the city of Dallas. And he also put in that the city threatened to drive a roofing materials factory that employs 150 workers from their property without giving them a dime, even though they legally called the factory their home for 80 years. That is also aimed directly at the city of Dallas. Of note, Representative Burrows, who authored HB 2127, the so-called Death Star bill that came out at the same time, represents Lubbock. Lubbock is doing a rewrite of their code, and they have removed amortization as a result of this bill, or they've recommended removing it. I don't think they finished, and it was timely because when I believed I was going to do this presentation 2 weeks ago, this occurred the day before. Again, I don't need to belabor this. The legislature repeated exactly what the Senator Parker said. It was to make it more difficult for cities to control non-conforming uses. So they added the poison pill. The poison pill in it is that we have to do a cash outlay that we cannot determine ahead of time, that currently isn't budgeted for, and it would be the city residents who bring the application forward who would make the city responsible, if it all went forward, for an unexpected debt. Again, the previous way we used to do it was to allow the business to go over time and cease operations. It was a fair way, and really we were one of the only cities that allowed that. I think Casey did some research, and there was maybe 2 other cities that allowed residents to do it, and they weren't big cities. In fact, I think one of them was a little surprised when Casey gave them a call. So I'm going to tell you what amortization and nonconformity was in 2012. I stole this from the old 2012 PowerPoint we used to do for the Board of Adjustment. So nonconformity is when you have a use that's legally established, follows all the rules at the time it's established, but during the intervening years, it becomes nonconforming because there's a change of zoning, usually, but not always, usually because there's the imposition of an SUP requirement. That happens quite a bit. So amortization, I think I've already beat this, but I'm going to do it some more. Setting a compliance period that allows an owner to recoup the investment they made before the date of nonconformity. Here's the process that'll show up in a second. I've already described it. Application was filed, and it used to be able to be filed by anybody. You had the first board hearing. During the first board hearing, it was whether or not to determine if there was an adverse effect. If there was no adverse effect, the use could continue and the hearing was over. However, if an adverse effect was determined, they would go to the board hearing 2. The board hearing 2 would go to the time to recoup the investment, and the use continues until the amortization date, unless appealed to district court in 10 days. So the thing about it is determining the amortization period previously was really just a battle of accountants. Everything happened on the front end that was sort of evidentiary based. Is there an adverse effect? What is the business? What happens? If it went to the second hearing, it became a battle of accountants. Here's what the investment was. Here's what my investment was. Here's how much overtime it would take for me to recoup my investment. And I'm not going to claim to have ever really understood the accounting part of it in the second hearing. That was, we retained accountants and it was done that way. In SB 929, they changed the way the calculation was done. And I'm not going to claim to understand this one either, except for it also includes, there's an and to it, and it includes the current value of the property the day before the application was filed. And as we know, the value of property has gone up, up, up. This creates a huge cost, a huge possible cost, in addition to the recouping the investment. So I've already covered this one. This is just what 929 did. I will say that, you know, as part of 2023's Texas legislative erosion of home rule authority, it also included the Death Star bill, which is currently making its way to the Supreme Court of Texas. There was a lot of significant changes in state law. So I've already hit this in the beginning. I'll hit it one last time. SB 929 puts taxpayers at significant risk of having to pay a bill and there's no input or oversight from City Council, because the Board of Adjustment is the one that makes the decision, and they are an independent board. Y'all are an independent board with recommending authority, and you have final authority over plats. They have final authority over amortization. So the unplanned costs could result in diminished funding for assessing.
Bert, can you say that last point one more time about the amortization?
Board of Adjustment? Okay.
Yeah, just.
So you guys are a recommending body to the City Council for legislative matters, your zoning cases, et cetera. But you do have final authority over plats and subdivision. Then if your plat and subdivision decisions get appealed to court, you guys, in the charter, you guys are charged with controlling subdivision. In the city code, the Board of Adjustment controls the amortization procedures. That's where the hearing takes place. It's not appealed to City Council, it's appealed to court. Gotcha? So what city staff was proposing at ZOAC was to allow residents to go in front of City Council. There's time to speak at City Council, and there they would say, we have this problematic business, and City Council could then choose to take it up or not at a committee or however they chose to do it. There's different means for City Council members to bring cases before the body, or to bring items before the body, much like you guys have, I think, the 3 signature memo. So just a quick thing, I've already hit this. Most cities did not allow amortization. The ones that do, only 2 others allowed resident applications. We did it for a long time. I think we started in the 80s. There are several that had council authorization. And on November 14th, we took this same presentation, Casey and I, to the ZOAC. And the ZOAC directed us to bring this forward to the City Plan Commission and include a process, an application process for residents to ask City Council to authorize a request to the board. The process should prevent applicants having a financial interest and not include or intrude into the Board of Adjustment process. And that's what we plan on doing in the near future. And I believe at this time, we would like to go to executive session.
Okay, and we'll take questions in the executive session?
We will take questions that relate to the executive session in executive session. Okay. Any other questions we will take at the horseshoe.
You would take questions now?
We'd actually rather do that after the executive session, okay. So the executive session questions get asked in there instead of out here.
Great. Okay. Well, so thank you for that report. So I'm now going to make a motion that it's now 9:26 a.m. The City Plan Commission will now go into executive session for the purpose of discussing legal issues related to amending the notice requirements for zoning cases and code amendments. that may result in the creation of a nonconforming use and the requirements for initiating and conducting a Board of Adjustment hearing to establish a compliance date in the Dallas Development Code. Do I need to read the entire case, Mr. Miller? Okay. And Janie Cisneros versus City of Dallas, the Dallas Board of Adjustment, and Kamika Miller Hoskins in her official capacity as Interim Chief Planner Board Administrator of the Dallas Board of Adjustment, cause number DC 2321102, is authorized by the section 551.071 of the Texas Open Meeting Act. So here we go. We're now adjourned to executive session. Thank you. The City Plan Commission has returned from executive session. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Wheeler Reagan joined us at 9:45 during the executive session. Okay. So next on our agenda this morning, we have a briefing from staff regarding Forward Dallas. So I'll invite, I believe, Mr. Ague up to bat. Thank you.
All right, good morning. How are you all doing? So today we're going to continue the conversation regarding Forward Dallas. As we discuss some of the updates and the concepts of Forward Dallas, I want to just reiterate that wanted this to be more of a discussion as we gives you some more overview in terms of what the plan is, the updates of the plan. The purpose of this meeting, we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page regarding what Forward Dallas is, the updates that we have implemented, and then moving forward as we begin to engage you all in future meetings, we want to make sure that we can have a clear understanding of terms, and when we do suggest possible updates that you all need to vote on in subsequent meetings, that hopefully that expedites the process and the conversation. All right, so purpose, staff is going to provide a quick overview for Dallas to continue the discussions that we've had prior. No items will be up for vote today or review. So just to get everybody on the same page regarding what Forward Dallas is, the plan document updates, and how we want you all to help us to update this document. So quick outline of what we're going to talk about today. The version 3 of the draft, that's going to be released hopefully end of this week. We're going to discuss the updates on that and how the previous body club helped us update that plan. We'll discuss the major items that came out from those updates, specifically the EJ and industrial place types and the residential place types. And then we'll talk about next steps. All right, so the draft of the plan that we were talking about is going to be released hopefully this week. We're making some internal modifications, tweaks to that. What we want to do is, one, let you all know that the release of that plan is going to help you all to then look at the document before we get to our next meeting in March. So what we want to do is give you all enough time to review the document before we meet next time, so you all have a clear picture of, or any comments that you have before we start to have a discussion next meeting. So right now on the screen, we have a QR code to our website where the document will be located, and then we'll also be sending a link to you all and the public regarding the actual link to the plan document. So as you all get prepared for this document, just want to provide some background in terms of how to read this updated draft. So as you look at the document, there's going to be a few different colors that you probably were not accustomed to seeing in general plan documents. So I want to just talk through what those are, just to kind of get everybody up to speed in terms of what you're going to see when you see that document. So the new edits, the new changes from the last release document is going to be identified in this magenta pink color. So throughout the document, you'll see that on the cover, on some particular sections of the plan document. So that is going to indicate that something new has changed from the previous version. When you see an asterisk as well on a particular page, that page was newly added, newly created. And typically when you have a page like that, not all text will be identified as pink, just to kind of make it legible to read. So pink is the identifying color. In some instances where the background or other graphics are not are the same color or make it hard to read the pink, you also see yellow in limited locations. Additionally, there's a few places where staff is still tweaking and thinking through specific wording or text in the document. In the rare case that you see that, it's going to be in red, and also too, it's in a particular location of the plan document that's not easy to see red, that'll be shown in green. So again, this would be just background information. We've provided this to the club as well. Just want to reiterate, this is how we're going to be showing the changes from the previous draft to this draft. And just an overview again of the major plan components. We're going to be looking at the land use themes, the place type descriptions, the place type map, and the implementation section. Want to bring up top of mind that the map in this version won't be updated. We want to make sure that we're clear with the descriptions of the place types, especially with you all as we're engaging the conversation anew and afresh. So that map will be the same map that was released in December. And what we want to do is make sure that we are on the same page regarding the issues from the place type descriptions, understanding what they are before we make an update to the map. So as you get the plan document update, the land use themes, there'll be some textual edits, same with the descriptions, but the map will remain the same as we continue to discuss with this body and the community, clarifying some issues regarding the place type descriptions, and then also to the implementation plan. All right, so what I want to do is just give a quick overview on how to read and look at the document that will be released for you all coming in the next few days. So the first section, this is going to be the place type theme section. And this particular section goes from left to right in terms of breaking down what the important key issues were, where are we today in terms of land use and existing conditions, what the objective needs to be, what needs to be done, and then talking about how it's going to be done. So each theme of the plan document goes from left to right, discussing and unpacking these issues, and then talking about what needs to be done, how does that need to be done, and what we're trying to measure regarding that. So this particular version, when we're talking about measuring and successes, that's going to be something that's going to happen probably post for Dallas, where we start to develop metrics and ways of measuring how success looks like. But what we want to do with this section is unpack the importance of these themes and how we're going to be moving through the process of either rectifying certain issues or who and how is going to be, who's going to be part of taking care of that particular theme. Also, too, on this particular spread, you'll notice on the left column, there's a Did You Know section, and that section gets updated basically every draft. So, for example, the descriptions or the definitions of the particular theme might be in the column. Some background information just to understand what the theme's about. Each theme will have the same structure. So as you go through the 5 major themes of the project, you'll see one, what's generally about, what the theme and the goal is up top, and then going from left to right in terms of issues, conditions, what needs to be done, and how we're going to do it. All right, so the second part of the document is the place types. And the place types delves through each type of place that we see in the city, discussing the overview of what encompasses that place, the land uses associated with that, and also the different ways that the form of that place looks like. So what we're going to do with this particular slide, just give an overview of what all these place types are. So this basically is shown at the beginning of this chapter. It shows all the land uses, all the place types, and the primary and the supporting uses that are part of that. So as we look at kind of a zoomed in part of this, the column to the left delves on the different place types that we have, and then the row on the top looks at the different land uses. And those land uses have certain examples that connect to those particular place types. So as you're able to look from each of the place types on the column and then looking back at the land uses, you can then start to see the primary and supporting land uses for each place type, and then starting to understand what that place type and that mix of uses look like in comparison to other place types in the document. So this is going to be helpful in terms of, one, just getting a broad understanding of what all these place types are showing and indicating and how they relate to each other, and also the other examples from a land use perspective. What are they describing? And then in the totality, how are these land uses coming together to create each of these land use and place type descriptions? Also, part of the place type section is our place type map. And just as I reiterated earlier, we'll be displaying the version from December on this upcoming draft. This is the graphical representation that puts this in the city locationally to see how they relate to each other geographically. So this section is going to be updated to provide some textual updates and tweaks. But again, it's going to be the map from December to 2023 as we continue the conversations in terms of what are these place types and how do they relate to each other. And then the last section of this document is going to be our implementation plan. This is where we delve into the how, the who of getting some of these themes implemented from identifying action steps and who's going to be the person or the department, leading those efforts. So for example, this is the environmental justice and sustainability theme. So going from left to right, we discuss or identify the objectives. And then as we go more to the right, then you see certain action items that are connected to those objectives. You understand and then see the lead agency that's going to be leading those items, and then the key partners. One thing that we added to newly and in that last few versions was also connecting the dots to other themes, other related parts of the document through a related themes column. So supporting environmental justice goals that connects to other priorities that we have, not just in the plan, but other documents in the city. So we want to be able to be clear with where those relationships are in this particular table that we're sharing. So as we go from the general themes through the document to this particular section, this then shows the more detail of the how and the who of moving some of those goals and initiatives forward. So with that, I'm going to pause and just see if there's any questions in terms of just the order of the document and what those sections are speaking to. And we can go back to any of those slides just for context setting.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Ague? Commissioner Herbert.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I know there's a lot of work still needs to be done, but a lot of conversation in the community has been around the lack of the word single family in the presentation. Did you want to speak on that?
So this is part one of a multi-part presentation. So we'll touch on that in the latter part of this presentation. But anything related just to the structure of the document, we can address now. But your questions we will touch on the latter part too as well. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a part two coming. Any questions on part one? Seeing none, I guess we'll keep moving. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so what we are going to discuss now, kind of the meat of the discussions in the community with our land use plan committee, and what we're going to be having here is two parts, the environmental justice and industrial place type discussion, and also too, we're going to be discussing and unpacking the community residential place type discussion as well. So what I want to do is give a quick overview in terms of discussion items, what was discussed, how we got to where we are related to the EJ industrial place types, field any questions that you all might have related to that, and then we'll do the same for the community residential one. All right, so currently the plan draft has three industrial place types. We have the flex commercial, which is focused more on the transition away from industrial uses to other uses in the city. We have the logistics industrial park, which is focused more on larger warehouses and the more logistics operations that we see in the city. And then the industrial hub, that is where you see the more harsher manufacturing land uses and operations in the city. So it's important just to kind of give an overview of where we are, but I want to also talk about how we got to this point. So the current for Dallas 2006, some of the issues and concerns that we heard and then we analyzed was, one, it has one industrial land use category. So the three that I just mentioned before, imagine all those uses being in one industrial place type. The issue with that is when you start to identify where those are located in the city, one is clustered in a particular part of the city, and also it's by and adjacent to the river and also surrounding residential neighborhoods. So as we look at just the location of this one particular place type in the Fort Dallas 2006, there's a lot of issues related to the concentration, where it's located in the city, the other land uses that it's adjacent to, and the effects on communities, especially communities of color in the city. So in terms of just analyzing that component, there are a few suggestions and a few ideas in terms of how do we remedy some of those uses that we're seeing and those adjacencies in the city. So I want to talk about the first iteration of the industrial place types that occurred through the development and discussion with the community, with our consultant, with the club, council members, et cetera. So before we had evolved into the three, we had two. One was called the flex industry place type, and the other was industrial hub. So the industrial hub kind of remained the same as that harsher manufacturing place type, where a lot of those heavier uses were located, but the flex industry incorporated everything else. So the issue with that in terms of including the flexibility of light industry and logistics was that there was a lot of uses within there, and the communities that were adjacent to those uses still felt that there was still an issue having all of those uses still part of one place type and hard to differentiate themselves as a community to those uses. So in the middle, we have the land uses that were associated with these place types. The apartment and the multiplex, those were split into two from one that used to be just multifamily. So from the discussions with the community, two things that they asked was, one, that we be more specific with the type of residential uses that we have in the city, and then those adjacencies near the flex industry and the industrial hub. So the conversation at this point was, although we had added an additional industrial place type to help with some of the issues that we saw prior to all of those uses being in one, the community still had some concern that flex industry place type still had not as much clarity in terms of those land uses and how it connects with their community. So the feedback that we heard from them was to think about adding that third logistics park place type that, one, remove those larger industrial uses into its own category. It helped us to kind of refine what the flex commercial was and the intent of that. So in doing so, the flex commercial actually became that place type where it actually signals that transition away from the harsher industrial uses that were especially adjacent to residential communities. The logistics now then can focus more on the warehousing, the larger land needed for those operations, and the industrial hub was focused more on keeping those harsher manufacturing uses away from the city. So ultimately what this did, I'm actually going to go back to this slide. So as you notice on the map, again, just for context setting, the industrial hub, that harsher land use that we had, now just show up in 3 major locations in the city, all closer to industrial uses that are either adjacent to those uses that we see in our neighboring cities and not in the city core. So that happens along Stemmons, closer to Garland, and then also by McComas. So kind of being very deliberate with the descriptions that those harsher uses should be outside coastal city limits near those similar type of uses. That was a very critical result of clarifying those additional 3 place types that we just talked about. So what I'm going to do is just kind of delve into the 3, and then we open up for questions specific to those particular place types. Again, just want to get on the same page in terms of how we got to those place types, what those place types mean, and then the direction that we received from our Comprehensive Land Use Plan Committee to continue the conversations with this body. So with the flex commercial, as I mentioned, not only is it a transition away from incompatible uses that are adjacent to residential communities, what we were asked from CLUP is to start to think about the scale of these uses, specifically warehouses in this flex commercial place type. Now that those logistic larger uses have been moved to the logistics hub within this place type, how should smaller warehouses be scaled and defined? That was a charge from CLUP that we were given. Also, too, they asked us to look at the mixture, focus on the mixture of other uses in this place type in terms of general commercial, supporting light industrial, and the rehabilitation of other existing structures to help make this more of that flexible commercial place type and less of that industrial hubby or logistic type of place type that a lot of people were concerned that it was becoming when we didn't have the 3. And then thirdly, thinking about including performance measures in any new scale warehouse or industry that comes into this place type. So it's very important that as this place type becomes that clearly kind of transitional place type away from harsher uses, that it's important that we're tracking through upcoming either zoning or whatever that looks like, performance measures for how those small-scaled industries and land uses come on board within this particular place type. So a few things I want to also note too. So each of the place types, like we mentioned, has 2 spreads. The introductory spread that we just showed gives a quick overview of what it is, the context, some information that we analyze during our existing conditions analysis, and then it gives a quick general description of what it is with a graphic of the future land use mix that particular place type encompasses. As you delve into page 2 of that place type, it goes into more detail of how you apply that place type contextually, adjacencies that could exist, how you address some of those adjacencies, and then the urban design elements in terms of mobility, green space, streetscape, and urban form. Each place type has specific language on how new development, existing development, new land uses should work and should be developed within this particular place type. So I'm going to note a few highlights that we developed and discussed with CLUP, and then you all will be looking into a bit more in the next few weeks as the plan gets released. So one, changes to this particular place type should be incremental, sensitive to existing context, and inclusive of community engagement efforts. So just like we've seen through Forward Dallas, as we start to talk about the place types, I think that engagement should occur, and that conversation should always happen as we're moving in terms of looking at these different land uses within this place type. Any new industrial uses considered in this place type should be low impact, small scaled, and self-contained to the interior of the structure if it's adjacent to residential uses. And then thirdly, wherever the flex commercial areas are adjacent to residential communities, proposed zonings or redevelopment to small warehouses or other similar type of uses should include those performance measures, so just to ensure that they're not incompatible with the surroundings. So I'm going to pause right there real quick to see if there's any questions on that particular place type. And then we can also, when we talk through all the three, if there's any general questions for all three, we can do that too. So any just general questions related to that particular place type.
Commissioner Hampton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think part of what I'm trying to understand, and I hear you touching on it, and I'm trying to read through the language, is where we have existing facilities that may be not where we would ideally locate them when we consider new requests. Is the land, and there's references to how to treat redevelopment, but for instance, you know, I have cases that come through in my district where existing business, they're either wanting to expand, they have other considerations. How is the language anticipating what thought should be given to those? I mean, I see one sentence in here, and does there need to be more, I guess is my question.
Right, so I think that's a great question. So two things on that. So in addition to just the language on how those adjacencies work, I think that the critical piece is going to be the map in terms of kind of where those are located in the city. And that's going to be something that is kind of critical that we have that conversation between the language here and the map. So again, to kind of answer your question, I think the adjacency section talks about whenever you do have that current adjacency to a residential use, we want to think about the new development of what that looks like moving forward to align with the map that we have on the document.
May I ask one follow-up? And I'm just going to use an example that we just considered. I have CS directly next to R5. Mm-hmm. No alley, no street, lot line to lot line. I don't know that the map is going to be that granular, and I don't think it's intended to be that granular. However, I'm trying to understand when I'm speaking to the community, how that is being defined within this plan.
That's actually a question that we're going to bring before you all is how does CS, how should that be incorporated into these place types, specifically the flex commercial, the logistics, and industrial hub? So as you all are looking through zoning changes in terms of where it's the current change to the existing proposed change, I think that we're going to be asking your feedback in terms of where, if there's any particular location that makes sense place type wise, should that use be identified in our language? So we might not have that at the moment, but I think we can use your feedback to use this document maybe to help refine how this can help you identify that through your cases.
And if I may ask one additional follow-up. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's warehouse that is a little bit separated from residential areas near a I-35. It's on a primary transit corridor, but there's a long-term vision. We have multiple area plans that speak about that turning into a gateway, being more residentially focused. Again, I think what I'm hearing is, well, today it may be more industrial in nature, through the place types, we would start to set the vision that supports what our area plans have already put out. Is that fair?
Right. Yes, so I guess that particular example along 35, I believe that's been updated to the commercial mixed use in that area on the east side of 35 to reflect and align with those plans that we have analyzed, and also with what the community has said they want to see there through the future land use of that area.
Thank you, Mr. Ayu. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could I just add quickly, if there are areas that you think that are missing to help do your jobs, some certain text, a sentence here and there, we welcome you sending that to us. What would help you, what additional language would help you within one of these place types, given the real life experiences that you deal with on a regular basis here? So we welcome adding in that language, and what we'll do is we'll compile a list to then have a discussion of whether or not we land on that amended language.
Any other questions at this time? Mr. Agu, a couple of editorial remarks on my part. This is fascinating. Thank you for the good work on this. I would be happy to devote our entire day to Forward Dallas, although I cannot do that in my role as chair. And we do have a docket and a briefing to get to. And so I think that I'm certain there will be a lot of questions about the evolution of the residential place types. So I think let's not shortchange that, but we do need to brief some cases. So if you could
definitely
hit the highlights, thanks.
Yes. All right, so I think in terms of the logistics industrial place, I think we're in a pretty good place in understanding the differences, and if not, we can always have a kind of sidebar conversation regarding that. All right, so we actually have our questions. The community residential place type. So I think as we go through these next few slides, I think there's a kind of a few questions that we want you all to think about back of your mind. I know I'm trying to rush through this, but I want to be kind of cognizant. I want to be kind of true to what we hear in the community in terms of input, not just from those who live and rent, but also to those who want to come into the city. So just kind of more hypothetical question. So those that have the ability and the fortune to have a home in the city, if you were to sell your home and try to live in that same community, would you be able to purchase or afford living in your own community? Just right at this moment, right now. I'm not thinking about added density, not thinking about what we have to do for the future. Think about right now. If you had to sell your home and try to buy a house in your community or rent a house in your community, could you afford to live in your own community? Yeah, that's an important question. Another important question back in your mind, as you think about that too, if you had to sacrifice living in somewhere smaller in your community just to be able to stay in your community, would you be willing to do that? And then thirdly, as staff, we think about those two questions, but how do we maintain these neighborhood character and still provide opportunity for current and existing residents to stay in their community? So those are the questions that I want you all just to think back in mind as we talk about what the progress of these particular place types has had through the last few months. So the community residential place type, so how did we get to this particular point of this place type? There are a few other questions that the community provided us that I want to just share with you all when we had the two individual place types before. So one, the differences between the two place types that we had before, we talked about the traditional residential and the blended residential. Those were both elements that were both single family place types. The questions that the community had was, one, it was very hard to distinguish what those two differences were. Please clarify that, staff, because right now we have two very similar place types and we don't know the differences between those two place types. Two, why is our community one single family place type and the other is another single family place type? We should be treated the same. That was another comment that we heard from the community. And thirdly, does future density look different in these two place types that we had at the time? So those are questions that we had through the development of the previous place types and how that kind of led to some of the concerns, questions, and evolution of the community residential place type that we developed through CLUP. So just give you an overview of kind of where we were and how we got here. So there were two separate place types at the time. The language that's here is the same language that was on the previous document and exists here today. One was looking at the more suburban curvilinear place type, and then or location, and the other was the more gridded, older type of place that you see in the city. Both same land uses, both same character in terms of both allowing for diversity of homes, duplexes, and smaller multiplexes. But the thing that we had to clarify with this particular structure was, one, is we provide this option to CLUP. If we keep the two, we have to be very clear in terms of, on the left side of the screen, being clear what multifamily was. So people were very scared that multifamily was just this massive term that just incorporated everything into their residential neighborhood. So we proposed to clarify the difference between a multiplex, a smaller 2, 3, 4 single family development versus an apartment complex, which went to 10 stories and 10 units and more. So that was one of the big takeaways, was clarifying what the differences were between those two place types. Since the other land uses were actually very similar, just making sure that each of those were identified clearly. Option 2 was merging the two and also keeping the same place types, but then identifying within that particular place type how the different urban form took place or was manifested within that place type. So one of the issues that we mentioned before, as people looked at the map and they were curious about, why is this area this codification and this other area this codification, but they have the same land uses. So in terms of combining them and merging them, the issue in terms of certain areas being kind of treated differently or unequitably, the idea was to combine those, still describe what those forms look like in that place type, but then also too on the map, being able to clearly see that different communities that have different forms was still a single family place type in general, but we can then describe the details of that in the language of the document. So that takes us to where we are with the community residential place type. So from the time when we had the two, when people were kind of confused about other neighborhoods that were close to them being codified something else and they felt they should be the same, others being really concerned about how does multifamily get incorporated into those place types. That has the recommendation from CLUP, which is again unanimous recommendation, was one to combine the place types into one community residential to help address those issues that they were hearing from the community, those issues that I also mentioned to you all kind of hypothetically, and then also too, as we were updating the map to provide some clarity in terms of how that's showing graphically. So I think that was also the three main issues, was just the map representation, the descriptions, and then to what those were saying about how other uses, multifamily uses, get applied into there. So some suggestions that CLUB provided us, in addition to saying that we should combine that into one, is the combining of the two place types into one. It looks to equitably absorb future gentle density needs if needed in the future. And then within the place type descriptions, we should be clarifying the urban design differences of how the two different forms that we see in the city take place. So I'm just going to highlight some language in the document. Again, this is not meant for a review. It's more meant for the conversation in terms of how we got here and the purpose of this particular place type, just to help us as we begin to review the document in the next few weeks. So, part of this says that sensitively integrating missing middle housing, such as duplexes and smaller scale multiplexes, provides an increased housing choice. So going back to that initial question about, if you were to sell your home in your current neighborhood, and could you afford to live in your neighborhood? And then also too, if not, if you had the option to find a smaller place in your same neighborhood, would you do that to be able to stay in that neighborhood? So this particular place type is meant to provide, one, like if a community wants to stay the way it is and everybody is able to kind of keep their socio-demographic status the same, hopefully your community stays the same. But things happen. COVID happens. recessions happen, you get older, you get injured. So we want to be able to make sure that you can still stay in your community when life happens, whether that be your family moving and growing up, whether it happens with you, growing older. We want to be able to provide opportunities for you to stay in your community from a land use perspective without having to without you having to leave. Like some of my neighbors in my neighborhood, they're going to be leaving to another place that's smaller and denser because they can't mow the lawn anymore. My neighbor broke his hip, and he's in his 60s, so he has to leave our single-family neighborhood because he can't stay there anymore. So I'm talking about what is happening on the ground now. I want to focus our attention on the future in terms of density, but also to how can people that live in these neighborhoods stay in these neighborhoods. Secondly, as we're looking at just connectivity, I want to make sure that how we are aligning these other land uses in this place type is done very carefully and thoughtfully. So other non-residential land uses that exist here, we are suggesting that they're generally located, a quarter mile from a DART station and other activity centers. And then we also talk about the differences between the two different types of form that you see in this particular place type. And this last slide, I believe, kind of touches on more of those urban design elements that help to clarify and define how this place type gets applied in the city. So in areas where you have vacant properties or inactive uses, that could provide a thoughtful approach of infill development, more housing, just to kind of be able to meld into the current environment. In areas where there's opportunity for that, doing that in an incremental and sensitive way. And then the housing types that we're looking at that could include duplexes, townhomes, multiplexes, again, for that reason, providing more opportunity and ways of staying in your community or having other people who want to come into the community and enjoy the benefits of that community, the ability to do so. So that is generally the kind of overview of that particular place type. Ready to field any questions.
Questions?
I have one, because I don't want to get into, we could go on forever with questions about residential place types, but for moving forward, people in the community are just now beginning to pay close attention to Forward Dallas and the application of the place types. What is going to be the mechanism going forward for these communities to either alter their place type or modify the boundaries?
So a few different methods. So like we mentioned before, our staff, we've been going through that community for the last few years. So we're still fielding calls and just concern and questions about what's happening. So we have people still coming to our offices. We're still going out to select areas depending on who reaches out to us. And then through you all too as well, being the experts of your districts, you all will probably be getting those questions and meetings as well. So outside of this meeting, that's kind of the different avenues that can occur. Also, when we move into the next few months, I think we talked about this before, we'll be thinking through time certain meetings with CPC to where there's going to be a specific time that we'll clarify with our teams and the rest of this body, and then clarify with the public that at this time we're going to have a conversation about the Forward Dallas plan, and we can be able to hear those comments in the public forum to then one for the whole body to hear at the same time, and then for staff to also respond to.
Any other questions?
Has staff done any kind of financial analysis along the lines of what you've talking about with specific neighborhoods to say over a period of time, the cost of buying a home has increased X amount over Y years to say, look, you bought here and it cost X dollars, and 10 years later it was Y dollars. 10 years after that, it was Z dollars to prove the point you're talking about.
Right. So I think our consultant has helped us do some financial analysis, kind of general analysis regarding just the trends of the market over the next few years and actually what's happened in the last 20 years. So generally from 2000 to 2020, the city of Dallas generally has been able to be relatively affordable. I think the source is Goldman Sachs in terms of one of their analysis, that generally from 2000 to now to 2020, the city has been relatively affordable. Basically, I think 100% was kind of like the baseline, and they kind of did a trend analysis. But for the most part, everybody's been pretty affordable in comparison to national trends. In the last few years, though, we've kind of dipped under that, and most of the city is not affordable to get housing. So I think that's kind of the general analysis that we've gotten from the team, but we haven't delved into the more specific, like parcel-to-parcel affordability analysis piece.
Well, I guess that's not exactly what I'm asking. Have you gone and done analysis for, or do you plan to say, here's a neighborhood in North Oak Cliff, here's a neighborhood in Pleasant Grove, here's a neighborhood in East Dallas, and here's what's happened to those neighborhoods in terms of the cost of living, to actually be able to go out and show these people, here's what's happening on the ground. And so when you're saying, you know, and the Dallas Morning News is writing articles about, I've got mine, the heck with the rest of you, and that's an attitude that we're hearing. And I think that if people could see some of these numbers and really understand that what we're talking about is planning for the future, not planning for the present, and what we've seen in the past and what that's likely to look like in the future, that's valuable data in having these conversations. Does staff have any intention of doing that analysis, or do you have resources that we could access with that information?
So yeah, so we're actually partnering with our housing department and also our data analytics team to actually think through that analysis and the data and how we could show that information. I think the general data that we do have is either statewide or based on the census, and being able to kind of do those drill downs is going to take a bit more kind of analysis from our partners. So that's part of the hope, is to kind of partner with the experts in those fields to help us provide more of that data to support those land use, those future aspirational land use applications that we're hearing from the community. That's a good point, to kind of use more data to support that.
Could I just weigh in that we do have some of those data sets, so I think we can show some of that data behind that. But I want to broaden it out, pull it back even further from the neighborhood level, and remind about the scale of these place types. It's really about how we're describing these places. And I think when we're talking about our residential areas and our residential place types, it is the discussion about what makes up those residential place types. And I know that there's been a lot about, you know, we need a single family residential place type. At a citywide scale, at least where we're coming at from at this point, we are not defining single family residential areas. Those single family residential areas are already defined by zoning. What this is describing a place and what are the uses that make up that bigger place. And I don't know that from a citywide perspective, in a neighborhood plan, you can get more granular. You maybe are just looking, but even when you're doing a neighborhood plan, it's not just the single family homes, right, that make up that place. And so I think we really have to think about it just even from the bigger, even the, you know, yes, we can get the economics, we can get the data behind it, we can do all of those things. But really it is, what are we saying about different places and the health and the sustainability of those places moving forward? Are we saying that, you know, then are we going to start to define an apartment place type? Are we going to define a duplex place type? Are we going to define a, you know, shopping center place type? It's really about what are these uses that make up a healthy area and the scale of that. So I think, I do want to get you all that data so that it can help you make those decisions, but I also want to just have us walk it back a little bit as well and think about how we're describing these places at a citywide level.
I think I want to add to what you just mentioned too, when doing specifically financial modeling or analysis, when you start to look at kind of the statewide, citywide, and then like neighborhood-wide, the accuracy of that information, there's a lot of, it becomes less accurate as you start to kind of go to certain different scales. So I think when we go into the neighborhood scale, for example, there's a lot of nuance in terms of not just the land uses, but other associating attributes that are tangential to that, transportation, et cetera. And being able to do that basically times all the neighborhoods in the city, there won't be enough time to do that, but we have the general kind of citywide data that we can kind of use and help and support what you're looking for us to do as well.
Commissioner Kingston, do you have another question?
Well, I guess I'll phrase this as a question. There are a lot of people. How do you anticipate that we bring the public along in this process if we're talking at a level that's not their level? And I'm hearing a lot of what I would call theoretical and esoteric discussion that's not aimed at the people who live in the city, who we want to keep in the city, who are, frankly, at the end of the day, the decision makers who go to the polls. And that's not very many people, but they're the people who count. So how do we bring those people with us? Because those are the people at the public meetings we have to talk to. Those are the people we need to have tools that we can educate them on these things we're talking about. How does staff plan to help us bring those people where we need to be? Because using phrases that we're using in these discussions ain't going to get there.
Yeah, so for us in our plan urban design, having those smaller meetings, that's the most successful. So we can have conversations in this body and say we want to have, for example, residential neighborhood. That means totally different things for different parts of this horseshoe. So I think going to the community and hearing from them specifically, when we say this, it means this. That's been the most successful. And then we come together through this body and say, based on what we've heard through all the different communities, this is the suggestion that we think makes sense to provide a general understanding of this type of neighborhood or these types of neighborhoods in the city. But most successfully is actually going to those communities, having that conversation, having them come to us, we go to them. That's been how we basically have done our approach in the last few years, and that's been the most successful. So I agree with you 100% that you have to basically speak the language that the community understands where they are.
I believe Commissioner Wheeler Reagan was next. Apologize to Commissioner Hampton. Okay.
My allergies are acting up. So what communities, because some of the place types are not, the community, there are communities that do not want that, some of those place types, such as those higher density in the single family. They can't afford, and we're hearing, a lot of what we're hearing about the place types is for the attraction of those who are coming into the city. Whereas the people within the city are having to move out into suburban areas that have that are cheaper in rent or even in homes, whereas in the city middle, our neighbors are moving out at rapid numbers because they no longer can afford where they're living, and density is not going to stop because for every smaller house, the price tag is still high. And so developers are building smaller units, higher density units, but they also, the price tag is really the same as the larger density. So I can't believe that we are having conversations in the communities, and these community members are saying, we want that. Community members are actually scared that they no longer will, they already can't afford the taxes. So what communities is this conversation happening in besides Bishop Arts and Uptown, who wants as small as density as they can so they can get as many units? But when you're moving into single-family homes, single-family areas, those that do want some type of apartment complex, but not the huge, overgrown, non-community-based apartment complexes, these are being serviced by people that are moving into the city. Every article I've read is talking about how many people are to come to the city, how many people are en route by 2045, but it is not servicing those, especially in my community. I bought my house for $25,000 and it's appraised at $158,000, and I haven't done any work to it in 15 years. And that happened within a 3-year period. So,
Yeah, so speaking to just that example, that you have not doing anything and your property has skyrocketed, how do you stay in your community? That's what we're hearing. So people that live in these single-family neighborhoods that say, I want to stay in this community, but I can't. How can I stay in this community? I'm willing to live somewhere that's smaller. I'm willing to downsize because I love this community, but I want to be able to stay here and afford to live here. So that's what we're hearing, not just in, you said Bishop Arts, but we're hearing that all over the city. Usually either from the younger generation, from the older generation, we're hearing that, how do I stay in my community? So I think, like I mentioned before, in addition to just thinking about how people that currently live in these communities in the city of Dallas stay there, we're also thinking about, okay, we're going to be adding more people too as well. So I think just for your particular point, we're hearing that from everywhere in the city, that people will want to stay in their community and they're willing to think about what land use changes or tweaks can happen to allow them to stay in their community, enjoy what they're used to seeing in their community, and not have to get priced out like you mentioned.
I believe Commissioner Hampton had a question. We're going to need to keep moving.
Thank you, and these can be follow-up, but I think one thing that I'm hearing, and I think it's reflected in some of the comments that we are receiving, is when we talk about integrating different housing types compatible with the scale, it also isn't acknowledging that many times what's in our current development code doesn't match what's on the ground. Understanding how that consideration is potentially integrated in the language. I think for me, a primary question that I've been struggling with as well is we also don't talk about what is the right mix. If we're going to talk about how we integrate additional housing, how do we know that we're not, as this is written, it doesn't give any context for how that would be evaluated. It mentions there should be strategic planning. There's areas in my district that are probably 50-50. They've developed over time. I think it's part of the model. But again, they're not all multifamily. They're not all single family. There's duplexes. There's all the things that I read in this language, but there's not that. And again, I think it's, to Ms. Gillis's point, the difference between citywide and neighborhood. But as Commissioner Kingston said, we're speaking to our neighborhoods. So how do we have the tools and the language here that everyone can understand and make a informed determination on? So I'm happy to continue that because I know that could be an all afternoon discussion. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Follow up. Thank you.
Mr. Aggie, thank you. I'm going to take the opportunity to just make a couple of remarks before we dismiss you. But my experience with meetings in my community so far is that the important question of residential place types is overshadowing the important question of non-residential place types, and that there's zero discussion of the non-residential dimensions of the plan because of the focus on the residential. So I'm sure you probably know that already, but there will be a robust discussion around that at some point, no doubt. I would encourage you to consider Commissioner Kingston's remarks about vocabulary, and I would add complexity. This is getting more complicated the more we add drafts to this, and you're talking about adding pages to the place types to further describe them. Again, in my meetings with my community so far, they're having a hard time grasping what so I think the simpler the better, the more lay-friendly the better. And then lastly, I think there's an opportunity to really lean into our GIS data and start to use data to inform us about where we're going to pick up housing units in this city and where we can make meaningful strides. And I think it would be really interesting to start looking at measuring this amounts of land in various places, commercial corridors, et cetera, and see what we learn. I think that would be important. I could go on about that and about that kind of analysis, but there were some remarks and questions in the last few minutes about more data. I think that to back this up, so I would feel like that would be pretty productive. So I think we're going to conclude this and move into our briefing of cases today. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. As we transition into our zoning cases, I did want to welcome Commissioner Forsyth to the Horseshoe this morning, who'll be undertaking important work in District 4. So thank you for joining us. Welcome. Staff, I'm looking at this docket here, and many cases that we're looking at today have been held and presumably briefed on several occasions. Not the District 4 cases? That's true. Those, okay. All right. Well, I was going to suggest we skip around, but shall we just start at the top? And is staff prepared to begin? Case number 4, M223027. Or,
Yes, we can start with the miscellaneous items. One moment.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is item number 4, case M223-027. This is a request for a minor amendment to an existing development and landscape plan on property zoned PD number 695, Phase 3. It is currently the Highland Springs Retirement Community, approximately 85.78 acres in Council District 12. This is the location and zoning map. The property is located far north Dallas, north of downtown Dallas. It is located on southeast corner of Coit Road and Frankfurt Road. This is the aerial map of the area. The development plan is taking place in Zone B. For the summary of changes, the applicant is proposing to modify the building footprint of residential building 3.3 and 3.4. They will be reconfiguring the size and shape of the building and shade structures. They will increase the building floor area, decrease the number of dwelling units, reconfigure the parking area, and decreasing the number of parking spaces, but still meeting the required spaces. They will increase lot coverage and adjust the location of trees and sidewalks. This is the proposed development plan in which you can see the proposed changes are taking place around here and then right here of the residential buildings. And then this is the enlarged version of the development plan. So this is where the changes are occurring. This is the existing development plan. This is the proposed landscape plan north. This is the proposed landscape plan north enlarged. So this is where those trees are being relocated. This is the proposed landscape plan to the south and then the south enlarged. And then this is the existing landscape plan to the north, the existing landscape plan to the south, and staff recommendation is approval.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? All right, we'll move along. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have M223028.
Commissioner Housewright, if I may.
Yes.
I wanted to, as Shayla comes up, I had intended to come up here earlier, but I wanted to introduce our two new planners. I think you have met them before. However, this is their debut at presenting and briefing at City Planning Commission. This is Shayla, and you just heard from Tasvia. So I would love for you all to give them a grand welcome and they'll move forward.
Welcome.
I'm going to just use this one. Oops. Okay.
Right. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. This is M223-028. An application for a minor amendment to an existing site plan for a specific use permit number 1357 for an open enrollment charter school on property zone R-7.5A. Anchorage is 3.98, Council District 5. Located at east of downtown, as we can see, location and zoning map, located northwest of Bruton Road and east of McCutcheon Lane. As shown here in the aerial map, we can see that there's single family all around except for the left, which is a church. The request is to amend the approved SUP plan to add a new parking area and remove 3 trees and add 2 more. So showing right now is the existing SUP site plan. As you can see, highlighted in red, it's the area that's going to be amended, and the 3 trees that are shown are the ones that are going to get removed. Proposed showing the parking lot added and the 2 trees that are being added. Again, aerial map showing where the proposed parking is going to be located, and staff recommendation is approval.
Questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Hampton.
Thank you. Ms. Segovia, 2 questions. I noticed that this is essentially adding front yard within, or parking within the front yard setback, which typically isn't allowed in R75. Is that a function of the institutional use that's allowing that?
I have talked to our traffic man, to our arborist, and he doesn't see any issues with it. I've talked to the other planners, and there has been no issues.
I guess I was asking more about the relationship of the zoning, but I did have a follow-up question on the landscaping. Is screening required for this parking if it is granted by this body with the residential adjacency?
Sorry, can you repeat that question one more time?
Screening required at the parking due to the residential adjacency?
Second.
I didn't see it indicated on the plan, and it's my understanding it would be required. So would that be evaluated when they go for their permit?
Yeah, since I can get that information for you in just a second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions, Commissioners? So, Ms. Hampton, can we move on and then, okay.
I'm
and then
happy
we'll-
to have
we'll
those
get the-
answers
We'll
after
get
the-
the answer. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Commissioners, let's move to item number 6. I understand that item is going to be held, so I don't know that we need to brief it. I do not. Commissioner Reagan just mentioned that to me. So, well, in the interest of time, let's keep moving. I could come back to that one if we need to. We have D234001. We're going to move forward with that, Commissioner Herbert.
All righty.
Okay, can we brief that one, please?
Yes. 1 second, let me pull it up.
There you go.
Alrighty, this is D234-001. Request an application for a development plan of property zone plan development district, number 521 North Zone, Subdistrict B. The acreage is 3.102, Council District 3. Location and zoning map, located southwest of downtown, on the zoning map southeast corner of Merrifield Road and Mountain Creek Parkway. Shown in the aerial map, we can see it's around a lot of warehouses. The purpose of this request is to build a hotel. It's 9,600 square feet, 4 stories, 85 guest rooms, and 85 parking spaces. So shown here is the proposed development plan. It'll take a few seconds just to stay here so it sinks in. And yeah, staff recommendation is approval.
Questions, Commissioner? Mr. Herbert.
Yes, currently, I believe in this PD, there's a SUP for a motel or hotel with rooms less than 80. I believe this developer is proposing 85. Does that remove the need for the SUP?
Yes, if they do 80 or less, then they do require an SUP. If it's any more than that, they do not, and it's allowed by right.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? If not, between now and the hearing, you might confirm with your applicant, I believe that would be 96,000 square feet, not 9,600.
All right, I'll confirm with them.
So the next, Commissioner.
And Chair, I'm sorry, Chair, can we pull this item? I would like to have a discussion with the developer.
It's a development, it'll be held, it'll be dealt with individually.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Wheeler Reagan, on item 6 that we're holding, do we need to brief that? We skipped the briefing a moment ago while you were talking to Mr. Baldwin.
I don't think that we really need, it's only being held because the full notification has not been sent out. It's one, from my understanding, staff said that there was one person owner on the property that had not been properly notified, so that's why it's been held.
Okay, so then we'll have staff recommend a date to which it will be held?
They said, I want to say 2 weeks? 2 weeks.
Okay, and someone help me with the math on that. What dates? That would be the 29th,
March 7th,
March 7th. Oh, because we're skipping a week, that's right.
5 Thursdays this month,
Yep.
so
Okay.
actually 3 weeks. The next turn, to the next one.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So we won't be briefing number 6, we just brief number 7. Is that Commissioner Rubin?
One housekeeping item. We do have a consent agenda for miscellaneous items, so if there are things that we need to pull, we should pull them.
Well, I think we only have one item on miscellaneous.
I thought we had 3, but okay, sorry.
But, yeah, okay. Well, so we do need to pull Commissioner Herbert's case then? And 6. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to remove 6 and 7 from the consent agenda. So, okay, got it. Thanks for the help. No, 7, it's just going to be pulled from consent. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. On item 8, Commissioner Sleeper, do we need any further briefing on that?
I don't know that we need any further briefing. I'm going to be prepared to make a motion on that and want to talk about some of the conditions, but I'll do that after the motion.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so that takes care of the minors and the development plans, et cetera. We're looking at zoning cases. I'm aware that we're holding items 12, 13, and 16 in District 4. Commissioner Forsyth, do you want any briefing of those items that you're going to hold? No need to brief those today.
That would be fine to delay the debriefing.
That
would be okay to delay the debriefing.
Okay, we'll delay the briefing. Thank you. Okay. And do we have a date that you'd like to hold those 3 cases?
Can we delay to the, I think the first meeting in March is on the 7th. What is the second meeting in March? What? 21st? Could we delay to the 21st?
Okay, so we'll plan on the 21st on those 3. We're not, he says we don't need to brief them today. Okay, I'm not aware of any other cases being held. So I'll just start at the top with case number 9. This is Z223-116. This one, I'm certain, has been briefed before. Any need to brief this further? Commissioner Reagan, yes.
Yes, also, 18 is being held by staff up on their advisement until March 21st. 18? Yes.
Holding 18 to, right, that was printed in the docket. There it is, right, okay.
If I may, on the item 9.
Yeah, item number 18, hold to the 21st. Well, okay. You're missing the wrong day. Okay. I do not hear any requests to brief item 9 again. Mr. Pepe?
Sure, but I was going to say that the applicant requested a hold, so they didn't specify a date. I forwarded that to the chair, or to, and I didn't hear back in regards to that, but the applicant did request a hold. So.
Okay, so we will hold, and I'm going to recruit a commissioner to handle that one here in a moment. So holding number 9 to date uncertain, is that? 3/21. Okay.
3/21 sounds like.
Okay.
3/7.
3/7.
They didn't specify a date, but I think they'd like to move on it.
And so no further briefing on that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
May I get a clarification here? I thought we had decided to delay cases at least 4 weeks if we were still delaying until the next hearing would mean that all of the, anything that the applicant wants to turn in would have to be in by tomorrow to make the docket for next time. So, I mean, I thought we had kind of evolved a policy where if we were awaiting changes from applicants, we would give it at least 4 weeks. Mr. Mulkey, can you clarify?
Hi, guys. Just wanted to crash land at the Horseshoe today. Thank you. You are correct. We generally advise to hold things 2 meetings so that we can get everything in order for the docket. I don't foresee that there would be a lot of things staff needs to do between now and whatever meeting gets held to. I think this is more to do with the applicant requesting the hold so that they can speak with with Chair Shadid, the district commissioner.
All right, thank you. I was just trying to clarify the policy.
Okay. So that leads us to item number 10. I believe Commissioner Forsyth would like to move that forward today. We should probably brief that. I don't think that one's been briefed.
That would be fine.
Great.
Thank you, and good morning to all of our commission. This is item Z 223163. Can everybody hear me okay and see my screen? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Then I'll continue. This request is an application to renew a specific use permit for a motor vehicle fueling station. The property is currently zoned a neighborhood service district, which does require an SUP for the fueling station portion of the use. And the area of request is just over half an acre, located on the southeast corner of Cedar Crest Boulevard and East Keast Boulevard. Originally, this was approved in May of 2021 by City Council, which initiated the SUP for a first 2-year period. However, the use had yet to operate and it did expire in May. They did apply for the renewal as permitted ahead of that expiration in December of 2022. And this was all while they were pending construction permits and their final convenience store registration requirements. Overall, it did delay the zoning case quite a bit. It's been ready to go for several months, but they have now cleared those items. Construction's complete, the use is in operation, and their convenience store registration has been approved. So this specific district, it doesn't allow the fueling station element of the use. However, there are more than just that use at the site. There's also general merchandise or food stores and a dry cleaner or laundry store use located within the facility. Now, here is a location map showing that the property is located west of Cadillac Heights and south of the Cedars generally, and an aerial map showing the developed nature of the site. However, this aerial map does not show the new fueling canopy that has been installed at the site. You can also see the surrounding land uses. There's an auto service center located to the north. To the east, there's some undeveloped land in the R5A district. And then directly located adjacent to the site, there is a multifamily use to the east and more undeveloped property located to the south, all within the NSA district as well. Across the street, though, there is a CR district. There's a vacant general merchandise or food store, which they do have the shared parking agreement to meet the parking requirements for this site, that location. And then there is additional undeveloped property to the northwest. So my site photos are from the initiation of the case in late 2022, early 2023. And you'll notice that I'll show you photos of the site that include while it was still under construction, and then some more recently updated photos of the site that show the fueling canopy already installed and operational. This is looking at the rear of the site from Cedar Crest Boulevard. The side view, and here they were installing that fueling canopy, but it was not operational. The laundry store and the markets that are associated with the site. This is where they were burying the tanks. And then after construction, these are now operational fuel pumps. Surrounding land uses include this undeveloped area located to the south, and that vacant general merchandise or food store where they do share parking. And then to the northwest, the auto service center to the northeast, undeveloped properties in the residential district, and the multifamily to the east. These are their proposed SUP conditions. The only change is to allow the use for a 5-year period with the opportunity for automatic renewals for additional 5-year periods. And the existing SUP site plan, they do conform with and they would maintain. So staff recommendation is approval for a 5-year period with eligibility for automatic renewals for additional 5-year periods, subject to those amended conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Questions, commissioners?
I had asked the staff to check to see if there are any criminal activity in this area. And if you'll allow me, Jennifer Munoz did do a check, and there were 3 incidences of criminal activity, but they were all the way back in February of 2022. And since then, there's been no criminal activity in this location. And even those events, one was a marijuana thing, and another was someone displayed a handgun, and then the third event was a reckless driving event. So, but those were all 2 years ago. So it does appear to be a safe location and not, a problem with crime in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for that update. Commissioner Hampton, looks like you're, okay. Yes.
Thank you so much for the comment, Commissioner Forsyth. I just wanted to bring to the body's attention that when we talk about crime stats, they need to be related and kind of like directly related with the sales of alcohol. So it's a little bit, we need to stick to land use, but I appreciate your comments. Just in the future, please make it into a land use rationale.
If I may, Mr. Chair, in that vein, Ms. Munoz, is it correct that we typically receive police reports related to SUP requests to help us understand and ensure that there is compatibility with the adjacent land uses as we're charged to do in considering an SUP?
Yes, we customarily provide them for certain types of uses that require SUPs.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. No other questions, we'll move on. Item number 11, as we stated earlier, will be held to 3/21. Commissioner Herbert, I believe we've probably briefed this in the past. Have we? We have not briefed it yet. We've not briefed it, okay. We don't have to brief it. But we're not going to brief, no need to brief it today? No. Okay, all right. Items 12 and 13, Commissioner Forsyth said we did not need to brief today. Item 14, I believe Commissioner Forsyth, this is a big day for clearing some of these D4 cases today. I think you'd like to see 14 briefed because we're going to take action on it, right? Okay, so we have a planner here to brief number 14, Z223-300.
I was a little taken aback. I thought there used to be a podium here. Good morning, Commission. My name is Martin Bate. This is case Z223-300. It is an application for a TH3A townhouse district on property zoned in R5A single family district. It is located on the north line of Hendricks Avenue, east of South Denley Drive. It is approximately 7,200 square feet in size. You see it right here, kind of in the middle of the map. This is the aerial showing the property in question, highlighted in blue. A zoning map that describes the area, as we see it is in the R5A district, surrounded by single-family houses. Directly to the north is a CR, community retail district, that contains a variety of uses. To the sort of northeast of it, there is a multifamily building. Directly north of the lot is undeveloped. There's also a general merchandiser food store, less than 3,500 square feet, on the intersection of Morrell and South Denley Drive. As mentioned, it is currently zoned in R5A single-family district, and it is undeveloped. The lot has frontage on Hendricks Avenue. The applicant, I apologize, I should have updated the language in here, but the applicant proposes to develop the property with a duplex. And to accomplish this, they request the TH3A townhouse district. Some site photos of the property. This is on Hendricks Avenue looking north of the site. looking to the northeast, to the northwest of the site, looking to the west, the site is there on the right-hand side, looking southwest away from the site, south across from the site, and southeast away from the site. This is a comparison of the development standards between the R5A district and the TH3A district. As we see, the main differences here are going to be the setback requirements that are in the code, lot coverage, height, and unit density. Something that needs to be mentioned as we look at the development standards is that while there are certainly differences here between the setbacks, there are some conditions that apply that actually will modify or would modify the setbacks on any development on this district. The first is block face continuity requirements. The whole point of the block face continuity requirement is that on any given block face of development, the most restrictive standard applies. In this case, R5A has a 20-foot front setback requirement, and so while generally TH3A does not have a front setback minimum, it would actually require a 20-foot front setback. Another provision that comes up in the code is the side setbacks for developments that abut a regular residential district. So in this case, if you were to build a duplex on this lot, the more restrictive side setbacks of the R5A district would apply to the sides of the development that abut the residential district. So it would be a 10-foot side setback rather than the 5-foot duplex side setback that we currently see here. Beyond that, there is a slightly higher allowance for height, 36 feet versus 30 feet, and the lot coverage is 60% rather than 45% for residential. But again, it is worth keeping in mind that these setback requirements, they tend to be the most onerous of all these other development standards, and so in practice, your lot coverage would likely not reach 60%. Staff recommendation is approval.
Questions, commissioners? Mr. Forsyth?
I don't know whether it's appropriate to ask the planner, but one of my questions is, did the property owner consider building a single-family home on this property since it's already zoned for R5, and why not?
I suppose you could ask that question at the hearing of the applicant.
Okay. Is that today or? Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And the representative will be at the hearing today.
Yeah.
And then questions about parking as well? Would that be asked later in the hearing?
Yes?
Okay, okay. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
That's fine. That's good. Commissioner Hampton?
Thank you. Mr. Bate, as staff evaluated this request, I see the recommendation of approval. Was there consideration of the established development pattern and the residential uses that are surrounding this? It appears to be, one lot in a larger area. Could you speak to how staff evaluated that? I know you covered it somewhat in your presentation, but is there any more context there?
Certainly, I'm happy to elaborate on that. One of the things that we considered in the analysis of this was how it would fit into the existing fabric overall. Certainly, it would be jarring to have a very large, let's say a multifamily development in the middle of a single-family area overall. But given the constraints that would be placed on this by the various setback requirements, dimensionally, whatever would be built there would be compatible, I think, with the surrounding area. Additionally, the proximity to the CR district lends support to having this use there or rather the zoning district there, because it does sort of promote walkability and transitions from the residential area to a commercial area that is directly north to it. Finally, it is within, I believe, a half-mile of proximity, actually quite a bit closer to a DART light rail station, and one of the initiatives I believe in our comp plan is for allowing some more of this sort of missing middle or slightly more dense housing within proximity to the DART light rail.
And one follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair. We received an email shared with the commissioners on, I guess, a concept elevation that's being proposed on this site. That wouldn't be binding if this would be approved. Is that correct?
Correct. General zoning changes, all that they accomplish is the change of the zoning of the base district. It does not bind us to any sort of development plan, any sort of site plan, any sort of rendering. In speaking with the representative, he's more than happy to share some examples of what their architects might consider, and he does have a presentation prepared as well to share this afternoon. But whatever action is taken on a general zoning change does not create any sort of binding requirement in terms of layout or appearance.
And was there any discussion or consideration from the applicant side, and I will ask the applicant this as well, in the consideration of deed restrictions that would further ensure compatibility?
Deed restrictions were not brought up, no.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Carpenter, you had a question?
Yes. Sorry, try to be legible here or audible. This case is an illustration of something that we discussed many times in comprehensive land use plan when it came to the general question of adding density to single-family neighborhoods, because I'll ask as a question, what actually exists here in a straight zoning change to TH3 to give some context sensitivity? Because all I see is the front yard setback. With TH3, you've got 36 feet, even though they're saying they're going to build a duplex, and they've sent us a picture of a duplex, it could easily be a 36-foot tall, flat roof, single townhome. And would you consider the addition of that sort of structure to be sensitive to the context of that existing neighborhood?
I do think that it would still be sensitive to the context overall. It would be certainly a deviation from the existing layout of the neighborhood, but ultimately a 6-foot additional height would not necessarily be that much of a big imposition on the rest of the surrounding houses.
Well, the concern that has come up in some of the neighborhoods with, say, neighborhood stabilization overlays and all, when you have height restrictions, is that just an increase in height, or I'll ask it as a question, do you not see that the additional height enables a type of structure and a type of roof that is not found anywhere else in the neighborhood? It allows a much taller structure with a flat roof that's, you know, a blockier structure and is not context sensitive in that way as far as the type of roofs that are prevalent at the moment.
It would be a deviation from that, yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, and thank you for the conversation. What can be developed by right now is a flat roof structure that would maximize an R5 standards too. So the roof is not codified anywhere in the code to our, I don't know how to say, not necessarily satisfaction. So I hear you, it's just that the code right now doesn't allow any type of like context sensitivity. It can be by right a flat roof, big box house.
Granted, but this could be a taller, big bath.
Yes, 6 foot, yes, this can be, so yeah, the neighbor next door can have a 30-foot box, this neighbor can have a 36-foot box.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Blair had a question.
Mr. Bate, because this is a general zoning case and it's a TH3, isn't that the most dense townhouse zoning possible?
It is the densest zoning possible in terms of what is allowed in the base of 12 dwelling units per acre. In terms of what could actually be built on there, you're ultimately, I think, restricted by the minimum lot size, and so they would only be able to, at most, build a duplex.
So can I ask, why not just zone it to duplex instead of TH3?
Certainly. I did look at the duplex zoning district, actually, when I first reviewed the case. The biggest reason to not put in a duplex zoning district is that would actually change the block face continuity requirement for that block face. The duplex zoning district has a 25-foot front setback. And so in the future for developments along that block face, even if you were to redevelop with a new single-family home on a lot, it would need to push it back 25 feet.
So basically, are you saying that the recommendation for TH3 is just for block face continuity and setbacks from what is already on the ground?
Correct.
Then let me change the topic to access and parking. In that particular neighborhood, how are the rest of the lots parked?
It appears that most of the lots there, and we can pull up some of the photos, tend to have front parking. We see here, for instance, a driveway on this house nearby, another front driveway there. In this case, the duplex use does require 2 parking spots per dwelling unit, so you'd have a total of 4 parking spots. They could be developed in the front or the back. With the front, they do need to abide by that front yard setback requirement. If they were to develop in the back, there is an alleyway in the back. It is unimproved from what I saw and from the aerial maps, and so engineering standards would require, if the property owner wanted alleyway access, they would need to also improve the alleyway at least up to the property to the nearest adjacent public road.
So if this particular developer wanted to access rear parking, they would have to they'd have to improve the whole entire alleyway in order to use in order to access the back parking. Is that correct?
They would need to improve it from the nearest public road to their alleyway frontage. So it would go, I think, in this case, probably from South Denley to at least the edge of their lot.
Well, conceivable, that's not economically conceivable, but so if you, the depth, or I should say the width of this particular R5, would it allow parking based on today's requirements on the street, if they don't have any parking on the, no driveway in the front?
If they could, just to understand the question, you're asking if they could use just on-street parking and not provide off-street?
Correct. So if they were using all on-street parking and no off-street parking, could they handle, or could they adhere to the requirements for parking today?
Okay, I think I understand the question. They would not be adhering to the requirements if they had only on-street parking. They would need to provide off-street parking. So as it is today, if you just plop down a house there but no parking, it would not be following the development code.
So based on that and the fact that this particular, based on the elevations that they sent, although we can't use it, but based on the elevations that was sent in to us to review as to what they were trying to do, that elevation would not meet code, correct?
I can't comment on the elevation that was sent. Was it the 3D rendering?
It was a duplex, no access, no off-street parking, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Just based on the one rendering that I saw, I couldn't make a comment on that. It doesn't contain any sort of dimensionals of how the overall site would be. I would certainly consider that a good question for the representative in terms of how they might lay it all out dimensionally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on this one? Mr. Bate, I'll just conclude with a question that requires no answer. This is rhetorical. Wouldn't it be interesting if we amended our duplex code to have the same setbacks and height as single family?
It would be quite interesting.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Item 15, Commissioner Kingston, any additional briefing on that case? Okay. We're holding number 16 till 3/21. Commissioner Treadway, number 17, any additional briefing on it? Yes, okay, additional briefing on number 17. Is that Ms. Bridges?
This is case Z223-342. This is an application for an MU1 mixed-use district on property zone in R16A, single-family district. It's located on the north line of LBJ Freeway between Preston Road and Coppin Hill Road. This is it on the location map. Outlined in blue is the area of request. This is the zoning map. To the north, you have single family. To the west, you have undeveloped and a hotel. And to the south, you have multifamily and a depressed freeway. The area request is currently zone R16A, single-family district, and the property is currently developed with a two-story single-family structure. The structure was built in 2002 and is 5,632 square feet, and the lot only has frontage on LBJ Freeway, and the applicant proposes to use this structure for an office, and to accomplish this, they request a mixed-use district. The next few slides will be photos of the areas of request. This is surrounding use, which is the freeway, which is directly across from the area of request. Right next door to it is a residential neighborhood. Also, they have retail and hotel uses. And these are the development standards. And staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Hall.
What is the house currently used for? Is it a residence?
As of what I've heard, it's a residence, but they do not plan to continue using it as a residence.
They don't plan to continue?
No.
What are their plans? Do you know?
Last I talked to the applicant, they are wanting to use the entire structure as an office.
If you look on Google Maps, you'll see a whole bunch of white trucks out there, and it says, maybe this is a year old or so, that belongs to a Torkelgaz Express, which I think is sort of what we call a hotshot service. It's got a lot of white trucks and vehicles out front. So look, and you can go to that website, and it gives that address. So I'm wondering if this is really is there a business going on here? I mean, it's not zoned for business.
Well, that isn't a question that I can 100% answer, because I looked in Posse and I did not see any certificate of occupancies in it for this particular location. Also, when I did my site visit, I only saw one vehicle, and that was the property owner's vehicle. So I think that question can be best answered by the applicant.
Okay. And I understand that those homes to the east are all used for businesses as well, even though they're probably not zoned for that. So, yeah, okay.
There isn't a way that I can verify that, but.
All right, thanks. If I have more questions, I'll ask later.
Commissioner Treadway.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ms. Bridges. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
So, my apologies. Did you say, the staff report says that a portion of it will be used for an office, and your current understanding is what?
Last I spoke with the applicant, I spoke with the representative. I spoke with her one day last week. They're going to use the entire structure now as an office. So I spoke with her after this staff report was written.
Okay, when it was portioned, did you have any discussions with her about potentially the accessory use for home occupation for businesses?
Well, yes, we did speak about that, and she also spoke with development services about that as well.
Okay, and I understand that maybe the intent has changed, so maybe that's why the accessory use wasn't an option. Did you have any discussions with her about putting some restrictions around MU, which is right now just a very broad zoning category?
Now, I did not speak with her about restrictions, no.
Okay, can you explain to me, in your pictures, there is a house directly north of this property because it is a residential neighborhood that it's part of. Can you walk me through how the residential proximity zone for that house that is directly next to this property would work?
Well, they do have to meet the residential proximity slope, which means it can't be no taller than 26 feet.
But you're saying that because right now there are no restrictions on this just broad MU1, it's just the base zoning category, that someone could destroy the structure that's there and build a structure up to 26 feet, even though there is a house directly next door?
They could if the zoning is changed.
Okay. Could you put back up the picture that
Just
showed...
to jump in on that question before we move on, Commissioner Treadway. Yeah, so RPS would apply, as Gianna said, and if the property were rezoned to commercial, in MU1, the rear setback along this lot, adjacent to the lot to the north, would be 20 feet, so they couldn't have structures within 20 feet of the property line. Also, the eastern side setback, adjacent to the other lot that faces onto the frontage road, a 20-foot setback would now be triggered there as well. So the existing structure, if the property were rezoned, would be non-conforming. But if it were ever to be demolished and new structures were to be built on the lot, they would need to adhere to the 20-foot side setback with that residential adjacency. And then there are also some residential adjacency requirements from Article 10, so for a landscape buffer there.
But isn't it correct that the house to the east, there's a separation of a street, so they probably don't have any issues with the setback?
Well, there's a lot immediately to the east, and then you get to the intersection of LBJ and the residential street. So yeah, it wouldn't go beyond there. But the other lot along this block face that fronts onto LBJ, it's currently zoned residential, so it would trigger that adjacency requirement.
So just to repeat what you said, so I understand, you're saying that if this zoning change is approved, then the structure that is currently on this site is non-conforming.
Right, so it could continue to be used in its current configuration. And I can't quote our non-conforming language from our code off the top of my head, but essentially if that structure were to be demolished at some point, any new structure on the property could not be within 20 feet of the eastern property line or the northern property line.
So, Ms. Bridges, could you put up the map that shows the properties to the east, please? West, sorry. Yes. Oh, there's another. Okay. This is really faint, but I'm pretty sure you can see the easement line in this one. Is that correct? Actually, put up the other, if you would please put up the one that shows grass. Yes. Okay. So looking at this picture directly to the west, there appears to be a green strip, and then there's a driveway and then a larger green area. Can you please explain that green strip that is directly to the west and what we've learned since the last briefing?
Yes. There is an easement that was dedicated in the 60s. And then in the 80s, it was amended, the northern 325 feet of it.
Can you please describe the purpose of the easement?
Well, the easement, from my understanding, was a buffer. It was supposed to be used as a buffer.
Between what?
Between the commercial and the residential.
Okay, so is it your understanding, again, this is I think a deed restriction is the legal term, but Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm calling it an easement, but deed restriction that was put into the records of the city of Dallas, and it was specifically to not let development happen on this land. Is that correct?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay, and the 325 that was altered more recently in the 80s, did that have to do with some kind of trees and some landscaping?
From my understanding, yes.
Okay, so since the 60s, when the corner was developed as commercial, it has remained a buffer between the commercial zone to the west and the residential zone to the east.
Correct.
And if this zoning change goes through, it will essentially upend that historical arrangement.
I don't believe so, but I'll defer that to Ryan.
Yeah, so to say that it would amend the zoning arrangement is
I said upend.
upend. Oh, well, that's very subjective, so we're not going to respond to that.
Let me ask my question differently then. So if we permit this zoning change to go through, it would permit a commercial property to be on the eastern side of the buffer that was specifically intended to separate commercial from residential.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hampton, you had a question?
Just one point of clarification. I think I heard it said that the height was limited to 26 feet. Is it correct to say that with RPS, it's the height above 26 feet is subject to residential proximity slope?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just wanted that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions on this, Commissioner Hall?
Would mixed use one allow you to build above 26 feet? I understand the RPS thing, but in general, would mixed use allow you to build above 26 feet?
Yes.
You know, some of the neighbors that live behind there brought that issue up in their opposition to this. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm seeing no further questions on this one. Thank you, Ms. Blue. Commissioner Wheeler, we're going to hold number 18. Do we need any briefing on that today?
No, they're not even ready.
Not even ready for a briefing? Okay.
No.
Okay, that's great.
It's been held on the environment because they're not ready.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, rather than presume any more on your lunch, why don't we break? We can brief number 19 when we return from lunch. Let's try to be back here at 12:40. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a quorum. I believe we're going to start with a roll call, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Roll call. District 1. District 1. District 2.
Present.
District 3.
Present.
District 4.
Present.
District 5. Absent. District 6.
Present.
District 7.
Present.
District 8. District 9. District 10.
Present.
District 11. District 12.
Present.
District 13.
Here.
District 14. And place 15.
I'm here.
You have quorum, sir.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Messina. It's 12:48 p.m. This is the Dallas City Plan Commission hearing for February the 15th. Welcome to all who have joined us. Thank you for being here today. I would ask you, if you plan to make remarks today, to please come down and pick up a yellow card off the table here at the front of the room and record your attendance. That would be very helpful. We are going to dive into the agenda here, and we had one item remaining to be briefed from this morning, but Commissioner Wheeler, if we could just brief that when we get to it later on this afternoon. Yes. Okay, we'll do that. So we're going to begin with the minor amendments on the consent docket. This would be M223027, M223028. We have staff here to read those into the record.